Okay, now we're moving to the chapter 6, the nervous system. So the nervous system is one of the most important ones for me as a background. I used to always live in fight or flight mode. My morning routine normally included a quick cardio workout, sugary coffee, and a long commute to work. So my sympathetic system was always active. Back then, I worked long hours. I had very poor sleep. I didn't know how to rest and repair. So I didn't have a parasympathetic active system. My sympathetic was always on because I was always thinking of a work project or either fighting with my ex-partner or dealing with just caregiver issues for my mom. There really wasn't emotional stability in my life. My nervous system was slowly crashing down. Once I started working from home due to the 2020 pandemic, I made lifestyle changes that I still keep to this day. So it was life changing for me because I started sleeping 7 to 8 hours. The moment I wake up, I used to wake up, I started meditating, and I followed that by a 30-minute yoga practice. That's the time that I used to spend commuting and going to an office and getting ready. And it was just a waste of time. And the 2020 really gave me a nice, it was like a pause that I really, really needed. For my nervous system, that was the best. These days, I know exactly how to prioritize my health, the relationships, and my multiple projects. So my sympathetic system now is able to shut down at night. So my parasympathetic system can do its best work. And I apply this to the 3 C's of life, which I always emphasize is like you must make the choice, take the chance, if you want anything in life to change. So those are the 3 C's that I apply in my daily routine, and also I use that as a foundation for my life now because my nervous system I became to realize was not only the most essential part; it just really affects everything in your body, hormones, digestive system, and the immune. So if you don't start here, you're already losing half of the battle. So healing the nervous system is really the foundation of many things. Like I said, detoxification, digestion, immune function, the hormonal balance that I just said, emotional regulation, sleep, your memory, longevity, spiritual clarity, and trauma healing. Because if you cannot really restore your system, you're never going to be able to recalibrate. Because when the nervous system is balanced, the entire body recalibrates. And that's exactly what we need, right? We live in a very stressful kind of environment these days, and we need to be able to shut down at night and to, restore our health. And it's not easy, it takes practice, but we're gonna cover this in this chapter. Okay, so this nervous system, I usually call it the electric symphony because I like to say it's really like everything has to be wired and connected properly for the nervous system to work and the whole body to work. So your nervous system is not just a network of wires. It is literally your inner universe constantly communicating who you believe you are. So if your daily practice is to tell you, I'm not good enough, I'm just not good at this. I don't know what I'm doing. I can't do this. I feel like your nervous system will always, wire this, and these patterns will keep repeating themselves in your life. And that's not fun, right? You want to be able to go out there and be the best version of yourself. And that's not easy, especially when you have that in your mind all the time. Because when it's deregulated, we said that inflammation, anxiety, chronic illness, and emotional stagnation will appear. Because 90% of all the chronic diseases have a nervous system component. And like I said, this touches every part of your body. You're connected, all the nervous system is a very, very smart system, but you have to wire it properly for it to work. So I used to think my stress was just mental until one day my body literally stopped listening. So my hands started like tingling. My jaw was clenching all the time, and I just couldn't sleep. And doctors usually call this burnout, but in Ayurveda we call it Vata imbalance. And we've talked about Ayurveda in the previous chapters. Just so you know, for me, I call it the moment my nervous system whisper, I can keep holding this for you. And you don't want to get to that point. You want to be able to prevent any like crashes because it's not fun to be in that position. I know because I've been through it many times. And the learning outcomes for this chapter is to understand the structure and the function of your nervous system, recognize any signs of deregulation, of course, and learn how the stress rewires the brain, which we're just talking about right now. How you talk to yourself really impacts how your day is going to go. To explore the breath, somatics, and Ayurveda for healing. We're also going to understand how the heavy metals affect the neural tissue. We're going to use some food, botanicals, and minerals for nerve repair. And finally, release emotional patterns that are stored in the nerves. Again, like I said, patterns will stay with you for a very long time unless you're able to, rewire everything and stop the harmful patterns that we all have. Now, let's talk about the anatomy of the nervous system. So, the nervous system is the body's ultimate communication grid. It's like you have your brain, your spinal cord, the peripheral nerves, and then you also have the autonomic nervous system, right? The one we're just talking about, the sympathetic, which is on when you need to fight or flight. Parasympathetic, which when you're resting or digesting or healing, usually when you're sleeping, you're supposed to be going through that. And like the parasympathetic system should be on, and the sympathetic should be, shut down in a way while you're resting. The enteric nervous system, which is basically your gut brain, is just basically how it connects everything, your gut with your brain through all those different, I would even call it like symbiotic or even like a very, very interesting network that goes from, top to bottom. And then always, I said gut is part of your brain. It's, in my opinion, your first brain. And this system controls every thought, emotion, and action. So if you don't have this balance, it will create a lot of problems for you. So we have also, let me go to the next one, some brain facts. So in case you didn't know, your brain has 60 billion neurons, and a single neuron fires up to 200 times per second. So imagine that. Your gut contains 100 million nerve cells, and that's why we call it your second brain. Again, I keep saying it's our first, but it's up to you how you want to see it. It's part of your brain because your nervous system is an electrical ecosystem. Now, we are also gonna talk about other things, how to balance your stress, because stress is really the worst for our nervous system, and how we live our lives dictates how we're gonna age as well. Now, there's also the vagus nerve, which is kind of like a healing switch because it controls digestion, the inflammation in your body, your heart rate, breathing, immune response, and your mood. Now, when the vagus nerve is activated, the body enters healing mode. And not many people pay attention to the vagus nerve because low vagal tone is basically related to anxiety, IBS. I used to suffer a lot from that, irritable bowel syndrome, inflammation. And then you have a high vagal tone, which is when you're calm, you have a calm mind, you have strong digestion, emotional stability, and that's what we really want. So you have to also incorporate all of this, and your vagus nerve is extremely important, especially in Ayurveda. So chronic stress floods the bloodstream with cortisol and adrenaline, like we mentioned before, and this elevates your blood pressure. It tightens your muscle. It accelerates aging, really. I know that some people just focus on, looking great from like treating their skin, maybe doing all this kind of procedures, but the reality that everything comes within, right? From inside out. Because when you're stressed, your body will stop digestion, increase the inflammation right away, reduces, like I said, the blood flow. It will even disrupt your liver detox, and your liver is essential for you to get rid of any toxins. And it will also suppress your immunity, which I used to struggle with this a lot. And that's why I know so well, when I'm like not balanced, I immediately will get sick, and this is awful. Well, there also can tighten your fascia. Your fascia, the tissue that is underneath, and that muscle. And I don't know if you ever had a fascia massage, but it's really great. But if you don't move that fascia, that's extremely important. Like if you are like constantly just sitting or not moving your body, it will get really, really like solid, and you want it to be not liquid, but in a way, it has to have movement, right? And then the other problem is that when you are very, very stressed, you reduce the oxygen to your tissues. So again, this is not going to move anything in your body. Same problem. And your body really cannot heal in fight or flight, right? And so it's been reported that about 77% of adults regularly experience physical symptoms of stress. It starts from headaches to digestive issues. But the truth, there's some truth in science that confirms that our brain doesn't distinguish between physical or emotional threats. So the same alarm rings, whether it's a tiger or a taxi bill. And so if whatever it is, your body will still respond to that and not be able to know if it's physical or emotional. That's why healing the nervous system begins with restraining your perception, right? It's basically how you see the world is how your body's gonna react. Now let's talk more about the nervous system and your gut brain. So like we said, the enteric nervous system, ENS, controls peristalsis, which is the muscle contraction. And this produces 90% of the serotonin in your brain. Also, it coordinates digestion, like I said, in your gut connected to your brain and responds to emotional stress. So if you're really stressed at work or you don't even have time to eat properly a meal, or have a calm moment to meditate, it will actually, like affect everything in your nervous system and your gut. Because gut trauma equals to brain trauma, and any brain inflammation will be the same as gut inflammation because they literally mirror each other. So how do we normally experience any nervous system imbalance? Like I was saying, fatigue is the first one because you're not resting. Your sympathetic system is always on. You have brain fog because you're not resting or recovering and restoring. So you always like forgetting things probably, or just don't remember very well what you were doing, or you cannot concentrate. You have tension, headaches, like I said, muscle tightness, digestive issues, even a racing heart, which is not fun, or sleep problems, right? It comes to a point where you cannot even sleep. And that's a lot of people in the Western world have this problem and they take pills, which is also not advised. Or you have chronic pain and then you take maybe ibuprofen or PM or something like that. And that's really bad for you, for your liver especially. And if you become dependent on it, it's even worse. Well, the emotional signs are pretty obvious, right? You're either anxious, irritable, feeling on edge, sometimes overwhelmed, or you just freeze response, like you don't know what to do, or you have that emotional reactivity, you're always like not being nice to other people because you're like in a very defensive mode, or you have just difficulty focused. Like I said, focusing is important. Your emotional world is a reflection of your neural pathways. And if you cannot really balance your emotions, your nervous system will be really affected, and also your whole body. So trauma rewires the brain, right? We know that trauma changes many things. For example, the amygdala is the fear center. Many people, probably don't have them if you had surgery, but if you have them removed, you can still feel it. The fear center will be that area. Now, the hippocampus, which is where you have your memory, so you're probably going to start either forgetting about experience, or you might remember over and over in a loop, which is even worse. That's why you need to deal with this trauma. And then finally, the prefrontal cortex. The prefrontal cortex is where you make decisions, right? The decision-making part of the brain. And all of these changes can affect your trust. I've dealt with that many times. Trust is one of the biggest issues that I've had in the past with dealing with people and even business or even like relationships. It's really hard for me to trust people. There's emotional balance, fear responses, of course. And then it will also affect your capacity for pleasure because then you're not able to activate those parts, right? Like those neurotransmitters in your brain because you're always like in that trauma response. There is neuroplasticity. I think a lot of people know these days what it is. So basically, it's the brain's ability to form new connections, right? Our body is constantly, regenerating. So that will happen. And then it depends on the activities that you do. It will form new connections, like new bonds. Like it could be also learning something. It could be healing a part of, that trauma. You can form new connections. And that will help you rewire old patterns, heal that trauma, restore emotional resilience, and rebuild that confidence in yourself, especially. Practices of breath work really helps. I do a lot of meditation, somatics, and biomagnetism is what I'm using every other day. And of course, the Ayurvedic routines that will have a kind of like a guideline for you to follow. And they do help strengthen neuroplasticity. So I totally recommend those practices. Now let's talk about Ayurveda, Prana, and Vata. So the nervous system is governed by Vata, dosha, right? It's basically represents the air, ether. So a balanced Vata means you have creativity, clarity, calmness, good sleep. Whereas an imbalanced Vata is mostly related to fear, anxiety. You may have insomnia or experience like nerve pain. And all of these are related to an imbalanced Vata. So what is a good healing practice for all of this, especially nerve healing? So we said that the Abhyanga, anything that is warm oil massage will help you. You don't need to go to a massage therapist. You can do it yourself at night. Just put it all over your body. Like I said, almond oil or sesame oil. It's pretty good. We also have Brahmi, the brain tonic, which helps with insomnia, very natural. Ashwagandha is the stress reduction. It's almost like a good supplement to have at night. It really, really helps you to have a restful sleep. Shanku Pushpi is for the memory. And then we have warm grounding meals that we also have the recipes for you. Early bedtime is key, or at least at the same time every night, and preferably without eating a meal 4 hours before bed. And the slow breathing, it helps a lot when you're trying to get into that, calm zone before going to bed. No phones, just you, your oil massage, maybe something warm to drink before bed, and that's it. Nothing, of course, no coffee or tea or black tea or green tea, just like a herbal drink or a chamomile or something that is relaxing. So Ayurvedic medicine really calls the nervous system a maja, dhatu, which is the sacred tissue of consciousness. So that's exactly what it is. It's a very important tissue that goes from top to bottom, and you have to, maintain it daily. It's not just whenever you feel like it, it has to be done daily. These are daily practices. Now, especially because there's a lot of heavy metals that impact the nervous system. We have been talking about them for all the other different systems, but as always, you don't want to suffer in the future with poor memory or any mood instability, even the cognitive decline that we see a lot these days with Alzheimer, or even the nervous system inflammation that could also, or the mitochondrial dysfunction, similar to anything related to Parkinson or any of those diseases that we see these days. So we want to avoid all of that, and then definitely heavy metals are the worst for the nervous system. And I would say that the nervous system is uniquely vulnerable to heavy metals because the neurons really rely on delicate electrical signaling. So if you add mercury, lead, or aluminum, uh, to your body, that will interfere with calcium and sodium channels. So that will impair the neurotransmitters release, and then the myelin. Myelin, I don't know if you say it in Spanish like that, but it's basically what is in your brain that helps you with kind of like being alert and also make good decisions, right? So you're not being easily manipulated. And so a lot of vegan people, I'm not saying being vegan is bad, but there's some sort of diets that kind of don't help you get to the level that you should have. So you just gotta be very careful with what you're eating. Now, like I said, there's many reasons why that can happen, but unfortunately, the main one is always the heavy metals affecting the brain and also the poor diets. So we do have the chelation as well for the nervous system because really it requires minerals to fire electrical impulses, like we were saying. So you have all the good ones, the greens, the spirulina, chlorella, cilantro, but then you also have zinc, omega-3, and magnesium, right? They're all amazingly important because without them, your body is not going to be able to chelate the heavy metals, without stressing the liver. You do not want to do that. And also, the magnesium, for example, is good because it calms all the toxicity and enhances the synaptic plasticity. So you need a little bit of everything that is here. I've heard a lot about NAC, which supports glutathione production, which is the brain's master antioxidant. So those are really good for you to keep in mind. Oh, sorry. I think I went to the same one again. Okay. So what is the good nutrition for the nervous system? Definitely fatty fish, walnuts, very good. They even look like a brain. It goes straight to your brain. Blueberries, avocado, leafy greens, turmeric, coconut oil, pumpkin seeds, and green tea. All really good. Especially it depends when you take them. Green tea, I wouldn't do it at night, but it's always good and preferable than black coffee. And now we have electrolytes and minerals, that we need in our bodies because their nerves really need magnesium. The big ones are potassium, sodium, and calcium, right? Those four. Because without the minerals, the nerves just misfire. Now, of course, as always, avoid alcohol, any sugar, any excess of sugar, caffeine, seed oils, processed foods, artificial sweeteners, MSG, and food dyes because these overstimulate or inflame the nervous system. And we don't want that, right? They're all over the place. If you go to a convenience store, you will find them everywhere.